was a 3-month campaign and she was supposed to introduce herself to the American people. No wonder people were Googling, did Joe Biden drop out? And so,
no. You saying 3 months wasn't long enough? It was too long. I mean, it was long enough.
Because we're fighting for a democracy. Fighting for a democracy. And understand the difference here. Understand the difference here. Moving forward. Moving forward. Understand the difference here. What we are looking at is a difference in this election. Let's move forward.
Moving forward? She couldn't move forward from that sentence.
It appears that some people are still upset about Kamala Harris's election loss from the previous year.
It's not like we don't know. In Britain, for instance, when you have a short election, it's not like you don't know who the leader of the party is for months and years before that.
But you're either the person who's Googling the day before, did Biden drop out, or you know in a week. You know, did anyone in this audience not know enough about Kamala Harris pretty much after...
In 8 months? 8. Additionally, some individuals still blame everything but Kamala for the defeat. But Bill Maher doesn't believe that. He thinks she ought to bear some of the responsibility. He made that extremely clear when some gullible Democrats tried to defend Hillary during his program.
The candidates, especially the Democrats, do to get voters annoys them. The constant texting. Did you get the texts like from Tim Walz every 5 minutes and like always begging for money and knocking on doors? We've got people knocking on doors. We don't want knocking on your door. Who in this day and age wants someone knocking on? Kids don't even like it when if you have a phone call. That's like too much of a invasion of their privacy.
Bill opens by laying out the main reasons voters struggled to connect with Kamala Harris, and honestly, many of his points weren't far off. His critiques were sharp and clearly meant to push people away rather than win them over. What Democrats truly needed was confidence in the public and a story that inspired them. Sounds straightforward, right? But that's not what happened. Instead, they spent their energy trying to satisfy a loud activist crowd, and when that approach fizzled, they didn't return to practical ideas. They leaned on flashy tactics, pressure, and emotional pushing, almost as if persuasion could be replaced with force.
I haven't done anything yet, but I understand the
This was the problem. There was a 2014 study that showed that Fortune 500 companies were more likely to pick a female CEO if the company was struggling, basically setting women up for the big job, but to also fail. If they did well, fine. But if they failed, like, look, we have a female CEO while failing. And that's what I feel like they did to Kamala Harris. When Biden refused to step aside and not run again, he was supposed to be that bridge. He backed off on that promise due to arrogance. And then he drops out after a catastrophic debate performance. And they set Kamala Harris up.
If you've been following this channel, you already know the left's most outrageous takes are nothing new, but this one truly stands out. Sarah Isser spoke as though Kamala Harris had been randomly pulled from a park bench to replace Biden, completely ignoring the fact that she'd spent 4 challenging years in the role. The left loves reshaping history to shield their favorites, and the mental gymnastics on display here could win medals. Kamala had years to earn voters' trust. Newsflash, she didn't. Bill Maher tore that fantasy apart, calling out Isser's wishful thinking right to her face. And let's be honest, someone had to say it plainly. There was no soft landing to be found. Voters never forgot Kamala.
They didn't have time to introduce. They met someone and didn't like them.
If they had had a primary, they wouldn't have picked her. And if they had,
That's
she would have been
different.
able to
Yes.
rough out those edges that then she basically has to start from scratch with a campaign team she didn't hire that didn't like her, right? It was his team.
And just when it looked like the excuse machine had finally run out of material, John Haman delivered yet another headshaker. After spending years insisting that Bidenomics was thriving, he's suddenly admitting the economy was a complete letdown. Really? Now he decides to acknowledge it? These are the same outlets that told everyone inflation was temporary, gas prices were perfectly normal, and higher grocery bills were all in our imagination. Now Heilman wants to pin Kamala's struggles on Biden's economic record. Give me a break. Bill Maher looked fed up too. Watching both of them twist themselves into pretzels trying to rationalize their missteps was painful.
If you're the sitting vice president for a president who has, throughout his entire term in office, been sitting at about somewhere between a 35 and 40% approval rating, people view the Biden administration as a failure. We could have a long discussion about whether they are right about that, about the economy, but the perceptions of the economy were that people thought inflation was too high, people thought we were on the wrong track, 75% wrong track numbers, and this huge inflation overhang. You're the sitting vice president, and you get You get put on be elevated to the top of the ticket 107 days ahead of the election. I think that is a very high degree of difficulty put on anybody. And I do not think she is the perfect candidate. I tend to agree with Sarah that probably in a fully litigated primary, she probably would not have been the Democratic nominee, but we'll never know.
Before Bill returns, let's make everything clear. Kamala Harris was not put in a cellar or hidden from the public. She was assigned real, substantial responsibilities. Remember the border crisis? Yes, that small task. She completely messed it up. She spent as little time as possible at the border itself as millions of undocumented migrants crossed. When she finally made an appearance in public, the interviews were nothing more than nervous laughs and word salads.
I watched the show, but I had Michael Douglas on this week.
Yeah.
At the top, we were talking about this, and he made a very good point that every other country in the world can do it in months, sometimes weeks. Why can every other country do it in that short a period of time? Are they all so much brighter than America? I don't think so.
Well,
Mostly parliamentary. I mean, there's literal reasons, right? We don't have a parliamentary system.
I mean,
we also have a First Amendment. We don't make people campaign this whole time. The American people want to give them $20 and so they can afford it. I mean, small dollar donors are arguably the worst thing that's happened to our politics as it turned out.
It's a small dollar donor didn't make $20 billion.
At the beginning, Kamala Harris didn't face widespread dislike. She had the spotlight, the media's full support, and the momentum of a historic first. But genuine connection with everyday Americans was pushed aside as her party became fixated on trendy political messaging.
I mean, I don't know, but Twitter, it's funny. It used to be completely left. Then Elon said, I'm going to take it over, so it's going to be 50-50 right down the middle. He didn't do that. It just switched completely. So I don't know. It's terrible that I think that we have our own media silos. We need places where, like this show, but there's not enough of them, where everybody comes and everybody hears everybody else from all points of view.
I'd like to steal a line from Dave Chappelle, who said at some point how he doesn't know very much about what goes on Twitter because he doesn't go on Twitter because Twitter's not a real place. That's sort of how I feel about Twitter. And Twitter, not only is Twitter not a real place, but it's become a toxic cesspool filled with nothing, not about right, it's not about conservative, it's just filled with misinformation, disinformation, and conspiracy theories. So I would rather not have the left replicate that if that's what's required. I think the deeper question that the question's getting at is that if you look at the data in this election, the amount of reach of all of these alternative, I'm talking about the whole podcast space mostly.
People weren't looking for lectures about identity when they were struggling to pay for basic necessities. That disconnect bred mistrust, not because of her background or who she is, but because she came to represent the very frustrations many Americans were already fed up with.